Senator Rice.
Thank you, Mr President. I'm rising to speak on the Marriage Equality Amendment Bill 2013. This bill has actually been on the books since the 29th of September 2010, introduced by Senator Hanson-Young on the first sitting day of the 43rd Parliament almost 6 years ago. It builds upon the first bill to legislate for equal marriage in this parliament that was introduced by Greens member of the House of Representatives, Michael Organ, in 2004. Then there were Australian Democrat bills in 2006 and Greens bills in 2007, 2008 and 2009. So I'm proud to say it's been the Greens that have been there since the beginning, every parliament, every vote, every time. Of course, that 2004 bill that was introduced by Michael Organ was introduced in the wake of the changes to the Marriage Act by John Howard, who redefined marriage as being between a man and a woman. And no, he didn't need a plebiscite to do that. He moved to do that because of the changes that were happening around the world. Equal marriage was legislated for in Canada and Massachusetts in 2004, 12 years ago. But of course in Australia, under Prime Minister Howard, we couldn't possibly be as supportive of equality, as accepting and as non-discriminatory as countries like that. So it's been a long haul. And I feel very honoured to have the baton as the Greens spokesperson for lesbian, gay, bi, trans, intersex and queer people as for the part of this quest. And I'm deeply hopeful that I will keep the privilege of being the Greens spokesperson when we finally get to celebrate equal marriage as quickly as we possibly can. This week has represented the highs and lows of humanity. We've had sides unite, we've had people trying to tear us apart, and we've even had weird conspiracy rubbish. But what a farce it has all turned out to be for Malcolm Turnbull. We know that he supports marriage equality. Malcolm Turnbull failed before he was in this parliament to lead us into the referendum, and now he wants us to trust him with a marriage equality plebiscite. Marriage equality has perhaps been the most public example of the Prime Minister's failure of leadership in his first year in that office. And the Abbott government was the worst government I have seen, ruling for the fringes and forgetting that government needs to be fair. And when Mr Turnbull took over 1 year and 1 day ago, we had such high hopes. But what a disappointment he has been. What is the point if he is just going to do the same things that the Abbott faction was pushing for? We've seen this in the parliament today, how much that Turnbull is completely controlled by the right wing, the reactionaries, the troglodytes of his backbench. In question time yesterday, we had Senator Brandis telling us that how wonderful the plebiscite was going to be and how he has met with the LGBTI community. But it's completely clear that he's been listening much more to the right wing of the backbench rather than to the LGBTI community. I mean, I've met with those same people that Senator Brandis met with, and they have told me in no uncertain terms that they want to see marriage to be enacted in Australia through a free vote in our parliament, and they want to see it happen as quickly as possible. They don't want to see us put through a hateful, divisive, unnecessary plebiscite. Earlier this week, we had Rainbow Families and the parents of families and friends of lesbian and gays, or PFLAG, coming to Parliament. They were here to highlight to representatives from all sides of politics that there was overwhelming opposition to the plebiscite from the LGBTIQ community. And what they told us, and what was very clear, that even for people who don't feel they're directly impacted by discrimination in marriage and the possible consequences of a plebiscite, I can guarantee that you'll know someone who is. Your brother, your sister, your son, your daughter, your friend and your workmate. I mean, imagine walking down the street with your child and seeing a flyer or a poster questioning the legitimacy of your family. And despite what the Attorney-General claims, it's already happening. Just one example, with the flyers being handed out at the footy at the MCG a few weeks ago, saying, 2 men cannot replace a mother and 2 women cannot replace a father. What absolute hateful, hurtful nonsense. And so a plebiscite, especially one where the No campaign is handed $7.5 million, will be just giving these people a megaphone, a licence to hate. We know that as well as the support for marriage equality in the community, that there is overwhelming opposition to a plebiscite for deciding this issue. 85% of the LGBTI community don't support a plebiscite. PFLAG did a survey that surveyed 5,500 members of the LGBTI community, and overwhelmingly they said, don't put us through the hatefulness and the hurtfulness of a plebiscite. And the people who answered the PFLAG survey outlined their worries and concerns. One person said, it's absolutely clear the plebiscite will unleash a torrent of abuse against our community in general, but even more importantly, at our children. Another said, I don't want to have to justify my family in public or beg my Facebook friends to be good allies. And another said simply, I don't want my children to suffer. Recently, nearly 17,000 people have signed our petition against the plebiscite. And again, as part of signing, and this petition has gone completely viral, many of the LGBTIQ people and their families, friends and supporters have outlined why they oppose the plebiscite. Owen said, as a bisexual youth and having had experience with organising marriage rights events and attending them, there is overwhelming support from young people to have marriage equality and safe, supportive environments for LGBTI people in Australia. This is the next generation we're talking about. How could the Liberals be so ignorant and dangerous as to propose this plebiscite? This puts the lives of every LGBTI person at risk by justifying discrimination and hate. Helen said, my son is gay, and while he is not in a serious relationship at the moment, I cannot understand why he should not be allowed to marry if he does meet Mr. Right. Another, who didn't want to be identified, told us, as a bisexual man who already deals with a lack of understanding and support, the last thing I want is an invitation for the whole country to call me unnatural, perverted and disgusting. I already deal with depression, like many LGBTQ people. Please don't put us through this. The Greens have listened to the community. We have a history of listening to the community from when we first introduced our bill for marriage equality in 2004, and we will always stand with them. Personally, I think of my partner Penny and myself, who have had the most amazing 30 years of marriage. We are very privileged to be one of the very few same-sex couples who have been legally married in Australia. But of course we're only so because Penny can't change her birth certificate to reflect her gender. Otherwise, because of our ridiculous marriage laws, we would have to be divorced. We have people across the country against same-sex marriage who say they are in support of marriage. We have marriages like Penny's and mine that are at risk because of our current marriage laws. And it's up in the air whether the changes proposed by the Labor Party in Victoria are going to go through their state parliament at the moment that would allow her to change her birth certificate without having to show that she wasn't married. Currently, it's being debated in the Victorian Parliament and is being opposed by the Liberal Party. I can tell you from personal experience that a heterosexual marriage and a same-sex marriage are no different. It's ludicrous to discriminate between them. I mean, I loved Penny when she was called Peter when we married, and I have continued to love her for the last 13 years as Penny. And all other same-sex couples should have the right to be married like we are. I think of the wonderful speech given by Senator McCarthy last night. She urged Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, please reconsider your plebiscite bill. Please pull back from this brink of public vitriol. and make marriage equality a reality in this parliament. We need only to be reminded of the hateful and hurtful commentary on race that ended the career of an AFL hero in Swans legend Adam Goodes. Do not let that happen here to any of these families in Australia. It was a truly wonderful speech, full of hope. Yet the government persists, and we know why. The Prime Minister has lost control of his party. He is beholden to his backbench, and whilst this continues, the discrimination continues. So now, this week, we have now finally seen the details of their proposal. First of all, we've got a rigged question where the LGBTI community, same-sex couples, are being asked to seek the approval of the rest of the country for their marriage. We've got a question where excluded from the question is any mention of whether people who identify as neither male nor female would be permitted to marry. I mean, the government could make the Marriage Act gender neutral by replacing one man and one woman with two people. But then the far-right backbench, who we know are going to do everything they can to stop equal marriage, could argue that that wasn't explicitly covered in the plebiscite. Now, of course, we've got $15 million of funding, public funding, your and my taxpayer dollars for these campaigns, on top of the $160 million that we're already spending. That would mean $7.5 million to propagate hate speech, to use a megaphone to say that there is something wrong with people like Penny and me, like the families we met yesterday. And then there's the issue that we've heard from Senator Brandis yesterday, that the advertising for this plebiscite will not be covered. It will be considered political advertising and so won't be covered by the advertising standards. So it doesn't have to be factual. So we can have the most hateful, hurtful, harmful, completely untrue rubbish going out there in their letterboxes, in their streets, on their televisions, using our money. And then finally, of course, the big issue with this plebiscite is we can spend all this money, we can have this outpouring of hatefulness against LGBTI people, and then politicians can still ignore it. It's not binding, and we know that there are many members of our government who are saying that they're going to vote against it anyway. Parliament should protect the rights of minorities, not subject them to a harmful and hurtful debate. This is such a dangerous precedent to set. As Senator Dean Smith very courageously wrote in the Fairfax papers yesterday, "I have never heard a candidate standing for election say they want to represent their community, except on issues where it's all too difficult, in which case they will contract out their responsibilities as a legislator." Senator Smith asked, "In an age where public respect for the institution of Parliament is already at a low ebb, we can ill afford to further undermine public confidence by effectively admitting that our Parliament can no longer deal with the big questions. What will be the justification used to deny future plebiscites on euthanasia, on abortion, on military deployments, or even on spending cuts? Where will be the new line in the sand?" Senator Brandis yesterday also claims that he didn't expect to see signs as part of the plebiscite campaigning like we saw in the Irish referendum, like that kids aren't complete without a mother and a father, which is such a ridiculous proposition. But, Senator Brandis, that's already happening, and this plebiscite and the public funding for this plebiscite will just give the haters a megaphone. So look, I want to outline a way forward that lets the Parliament do what it's meant to do and gives the LGBTI community hope for a simpler way to end marriage discrimination. So first of all, we've got to pull the plug on the hateful, hurtful, unnecessary, expensive plebiscite. And I call upon the Labor Party not to leave the LGBTI community waiting for another 3 weeks before they definitively announce their position. They need to fully commit to rejecting this hateful plebiscite now. Australia is ready for marriage equality. We don't need a plebiscite to tell us what we already know. So then secondly, once we have rejected the plebiscite, then we need to let Parliament do its job. We currently have 2 bills in the House of Representatives not being debated, But the bill with the most chance probably isn't going to be the bill that we're debating today, but the bill that would have the most chance of getting through is going to be a cross-party bill. And so I invite members of the Labor Party, members of the crossbench, and who knows, maybe even some Liberal Party members, to join together in introducing a cross-party bill in this Senate. And if the Senate so desires, we can then have a respectful committee inquiry which can explore the cases for and against, what's changed since the last time we inquired into equal marriage, how the rest of the world has moved on from Spain to New Zealand to the UK to the US. We can be definitive about the level of support for marriage equality across the country. We can put the case for and the case against together, and armed with that information, members of the Senate and then members of the House of Representatives can vote. And I'm confident that with a free vote that we already have a majority of senators and members who will vote in favour. And we can have wedding bells ringing by Christmas. We can do this. We just need to work together. And we can enrich the lives of many Australians through a simple vote in Parliament. When I first entered this place, I said that I'm here for all lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender and intersex people and their families. And marriage equality is such an important step towards the goal of ending discrimination against them. I say to my fellow LGBTIQ Australians, the time is coming, and every day we take a step towards achieving marriage equality. Every day LGBTIQ people, our family, our friends and our supporters fill me with hope. We know that love is love, that love will prevail, and it's time to put love into law.